Welcome, everybody, to episode 292 of WordPress Weekly for Wednesday, October 25th, almost a spooky Halloween edition, 2017. I'm your host, Jeff Chandler, joined once again by the wonderful, absolutely stunning, even with the freckle tan, John James Jacoby. How you doing, sir?
I'm freckly and tan, fresh off a Cabo press. So
is that enough to make you feel awkward? Record tan?
No, that's just like the typical type of harassment that I get from you in the pre-show. I'm used to that.
Okay,
not awkward yet.
Oh well, we'll work on it at some point during the show. Yeah, we're back. I had a little hiatus last week. I experienced some technical issues. I had a lot of blue screens. Things were crashing. Had no idea what was going on. I bought a couple new RAM sticks for my desktop computer. Those worked fine, and then they didn't work fine. I needed a new hard drive anyways because I was running out of space. So I bought a new hard drive thinking that was the issue. It turns out it was a new RAM, the new memory. So I put the old memory back in. So now I have a fresh install of Windows 7 that I love and I will not move away from until I am forced to. On a brand new SSD with my old RAM, everything's been working fine. I didn't get a chance to install everything I needed to. Let me tell you, Windows Update was a pain in the ass last Wednesday when I tried to update everything. It was, oh my God, it was a horrible experience. It was like 8 hours of trying to update, and then things would stall, and then update, things would stall, and it was just a incredibly painful experience. But we're back with you today. John went to Cabo Press, and we have Cody Landefeld on today to give us everything that happened at WOOOOOOConf in Seattle. And Cody, welcome back to the show. You are the co-founder of ModeEffect and our official WooCommerce correspondent. And we pay you with like Starbucks or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. What kind of currency do you like?
We're still waiting for that first gift card to show up in the mail. So
yeah, okay. We'll pay in leads. How about that? Anyways, welcome back to the show, man. But we got a lot to cover today. A lot of different things to talk about, especially with WooComf. And we'll start off with WooComf, which was I actually got it wrong in the article. I wrote it was the second annual WooComf. It's actually the third. And this year's event had a focus on developers, which there were topics on scalability and I think extensions. But the thing I was most interested in as someone who was covering the event was Todd Wilkins' very first event. It wasn't called the State of the Woo, but it was basically an overview of the project's accomplishments in the past year, what they've been working on, and things to come. And Cody, I'll hand it off to you. I imagine you were there in the audience, and tell us about a little bit about the State of the Woo.
Yeah, so it's a little fuzzy in my mind. I'm just going to give you some highlights here. It was exciting just to see WooCommerce grow up a little bit and take some of that same bravado as WordPress has, because we've established the WordCamp US with the State of the Word, and Matt's leading that. So now it was the first year you had a transition of somebody brand new leading the WooCommerce initiative, Todd Wilkins, and he shared a lot about what's coming up in 3.0 and really focused on some of the things not only that are important for store owners but also developers. And some of the things, obviously there was some similar thoughts he had shared with the group there with regards to having folks understand that WordPress has a really important focus on democratizing usage, and that was a big thing that he covered, and just saying, we really want every single person in every single country to be able to utilize WooCommerce just like they do WordPress. And I think WooCommerce is a lot different because it's almost seen as separate. I mean, even though it's part of WordPress, it's separate. So you have kind of a different opportunity and a lot more challenges, especially on an international basis with payment gateways and strict rules and whatever. So it's a big challenge. And I think 3.0 or rather 4.0 is going to really see a lot of that initiative start to take shape, but it's still going to be a long process. So like he discussed. Another point he had touched base on was just making the upgrade experience and the maintenance experience a lot better. And
he referenced WooCommerce 3.0, where a lot of people had a lot of issues with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, because the challenge is, as an agency owner serving a lot of WooCommerce stores, it is to just deal with all the customizations. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. All these things that are going on with regards to WooCommerce, customization of your store, but at the same time, it really does create some challenges with the upgrades. So that was a big point he touched on, just with regards to making the reliable upgrades, a thing. Even though the newest version of WooCommerce that dropped about 2 weeks ago rather, it's a minor update, but again, causing a lot of challenges just with bigger stores and whatnot. And we've seen that firsthand. So those are kind of the two key, or the few takeaways. Some of what's coming up in 4.0. I think I don't know if they've shared his slides. I think they're going to be shared pretty quickly. I just saw something come out where they were going to go out.
Yeah, let's cover a couple of some of the highlights I took away from his conference. And the one is this big number, right? I think it's pretty big. Woo stores will do over $10 billion in sales this year. And Todd Wilkins, head of WooCommerce, said this was kind of a conservative estimate. It could be as high or more than $15 billion. Now, there's been some questions out there as to where are they getting this number, because there hasn't been any analysis or anything that's been published yet that indicates how they got this number. But further discussion suggests that they're able to monitor the sales through the payment gateways. So whether that's Stripe or PayPal, and they receive a cut of those fees, they're able to determine an amount of the sales figures. Does that sound about accurate to you, Cody, on how they'd be able to track that number?
It seems like it. I mean, if not that, there's some type of a way to just figure out some query from the database, and figure out some general number. Like, there's orders and then there's total amounts, and I think that's all stored in the database somewhat. So some type of phoning home is probably being done to track that on a high level.
So when you brought that number out, was there like a collective woo or ah or whoa or something like that when you said that number? Do you think that's a high number? All Woo stores combined, or all Woo stores that they're tracking $10 billion or more in sales?
You said 10. Are you saying 10 billion or 10 million?
10 billion with a B, with a pinky.
It is a high number, but I've seen, covering a lot of topics in e-commerce in general. It's even larger than that, a lot larger than that. So, that is a massive number, and a lot of people were surprised, and I think there's a little bit of rounding up, but
there's only 3.5 million only. There's only 3.5 million active Word or WooConf. WooCommerce. Too many W's, too many C's. There's 3.5 million active WooCommerce installations. So to hit 10 billion means that each store, the median is they're making a lot of money. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there are some stores that are making a lot of money, and that there are most stores making dozens of dollars a year. And then in general, maybe somehow it averages out. But 10 billion is a nice number, but to me, it seems pretty high.
Well, you highlight that, and Todd actually said that many of the sites that use WooCommerce are individuals or small to medium-sized businesses who are, either selling one thing or selling maybe a dozen products or maybe multiple dozens of products. But then he highlighted the fact that WooCommerce is also used in places or for businesses that generate $100 million or more per year. And he profiled a company called HEB, which is a large grocery retailer in Texas that uses WooCommerce for its sister company, Central Market. And WebDev Studios actually built the site on WordPress and used WooCommerce to handle the company's e-commerce needs. And we're talking about a company that has an inventory of over 26,000 products, mostly in produce. So there's variety, there is quantity, different types that you have to account for, and actually wrote different scripts to sort of help automate that process. But they said it's actually worked for them really well, and that's something Todd really wanted to. And it kind of goes back to what you said, Cody, and democratizing selling, where they want anybody and everybody who is able to to be able to sell things, whether that's just one thing or companies like HEB where they're doing $100 million or more per year.
But that would mean that there would need to be 300 HEBs. Like there would need to be, to hit 10 billion, well, there would be 100 because 100 million. So there would need to be at least 100 of them. And there's not. There's one of them. There is that one that happens to be using it for that thing. So at that scale. So do we fill the gaps with all of the other 3.499999 million installs? It's 10 billion's I don't know.
No, it's a large reach. Well, the HEB number, I wonder if that's a total revenue number, because I believe that they're only doing their online ordering through there. And just imagine a grocery store's total gross and compare how much of that income is done by online ordering. And quite frankly, I think there's a small amount of those sales are coming through that channel. So, I mean, not to disvalue or discredit the amount of volume being done there, but it could be a much more conservative number when you look under the dash.
Well, I think there was 2 points. One, illustrate, there are people selling things for 10 or 20 bucks and who are making a good living, or huge companies are implementing WooCommerce into their platform, but kind of just an illustration that WooCommerce can be used from small to medium-sized businesses to large businesses, because there is this, I think I want to call it a stigma. I mean, I've seen it discussed on Twitter and other areas of the community that WooCommerce does not scale because it runs on, I don't know if it's a WordPress issue or if it's the platform it runs on or just the code behind WooCommerce. But in fact, at WooConf, there were at least 1 or 2 sessions dedicated on scalability. But Cody, in your experience and maybe in some of the projects you've worked on hands-on, can and does WooCommerce scale?
Yeah, I think it can, but again, not easily. That's the challenge. And to go back to the point of revenue, I think that's where there's still either stores or companies that have realized that a certain revenue point is the best use case for having to deal with the scalability challenges with WooCommerce, represented by, say, maybe over $1 million in revenue to $100 million in revenue. That could easily justify somebody wanting to take on that challenge of ongoing maintenance and whatnot. But to answer your question in the longest way possible, it's there definitely is challenges around that, and I could see Zach Stefik did a really good keynote and talked about some technology that they came out, and I didn't write it down. So a really good search technology that they were displaying that just is going to be a game changer for the front end querying for users. And a lot of other, his topic touched on scaling. I think there was at least another talk. I didn't catch every single talk, but definitely in what we've seen too. I mean, there's just all these certain things, and even with Liquid Web launching their new managed WooCommerce, they're dealing with some challenges that a lot of store owners seem to face with the product ordering tables and stuff like that. So I think that there's just all these things that are related to the constraints of WordPress that we see, which makes it difficult to scale.
And I'll pose this question either to both you and John. And I was thinking about this, is that do you think WooCommerce as it is today, or maybe in the future, would be better off as its own separate thing, its own entity, its own platform, where it doesn't have to rely on any of the constraints possibly that WordPress has that may be holding it back? Or is it beneficial for it to piggyback on WordPress?
I think it's only a positive, and WooCommerce wouldn't be nearly the success or powerhouse that it is without WordPress underneath it. If it was just a standalone thing, it would be competing with much more mature pieces of software like Magento and or even just hosted platforms like Shopify. And with the ease of install of WordPress and hosting being so prevalent and easy for WordPress itself, that it is the jump start for getting WooCommerce to over 3 million installs as quickly as it's happened over the course of the past few years. So the technological constraints are really just developer limited. They're only because developers aren't really at a place where they're comfortable pushing the envelope or thinking outside of the WordPress box. Everyone is still kind of thinking about post types and taxonomies and starting to get to like the BuddyPress model of custom database tables and objects and caching and really owning that part of the experience. So once WooCommerce comes around to, and starting to, and everybody is, custom database tables at scale, that are designed to handle multiple transactions at a time and more efficient reporting and those kind of things. WooCommerce has a very bright technological future ahead of it, because I think really the worst is behind it, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate that perspective. I think the only thing I would add, and I deal with this because I'm not the technician. I'm not the person who's back there in the weeds of every line of code in the database and whatnot. But I deal with a lot of the people who are just not WordPress people. They're e-commerce shop owners, and they see WooCommerce in total parity to a platform like Shopify, because they're looking at Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, and WooCommerce. And I agree. I think WordPress, if WordPress.com or Automatic or whoever launched a separate piece of software that had nothing to do with WordPress core, the battle to get that, the users on that platform would just be tremendously difficult. So yeah, definitely it benefited from being on the back of WordPress. But again, to the outside technical person who is just focused on, does my store need to run on WooCommerce? I do see them seeing it as absolute parity. And I think it's a difficult thing, because you're right, developers, we need to really focus on building scalability. And this whole entire conference really addressed that, because there was a lot of people that are in the trenches that understood. And I think I've even heard some feedback online and offline from people saying, should this have been a developer focused conference? I actually think it was the right call, because we do need a huddle. And there was a lot of inclusion of other agencies, not just being like, my agency's better than yours. And it's kind of like, it was a lot different than some of your WordCamps. So it was very inclusive of, like, even Zach's talk was like, let's get together on this. Let's partner together. Let's all kind of join together to build the platform to what it needs to be, because we're all going to benefit.
I think the majority of the scalability or the scaling issues that WooCommerce has are not too different than the ones that WordPress had in the early days, where they're really not about WordPress or PHP as they are about the general hosting environment that these websites are being powered by or ran inside of. And so if you're running into issues with multiple transactions happening at the same time, at the exact same second, well, there's not much WordPress or WooCommerce can do about database locking if your web host has locked it down to 1 write per second or something. And if your Nginx rules only allow for a certain number of transactions or pages to be served in one given time, then shopping carts are going to be a problem. And everyone that tries to refresh a cart or move on to the next step is going to get stuck behind the queue of pages that are loading with sessions that are ahead of them. And so as web hosts find more little sharp edges to file off and make this a smoother experience, WooCommerce in general just benefits, which is why I think it's really smart for the folks at Liquid Web to double down on hosting like WooCommerce, like very WooCommerce specific type of hosting, because it is a different animal from just WordPress in general. Like WordPress is tuned to serve pages. It isn't tuned to process transactions. And that was the BuddyPress and BBPress problem of posting forums and lots of activity, lots of logged in users. There's just lots of clatter amongst all of the stack. And so WooCommerce is experiencing this now. And I think WooCommerce is actually doing a really good job of getting everyone else to understand the complexities of the same problems that the BBs and other complex plugins have had for a really long time. If it wasn't for WooCommerce, I don't know that most developers would be talking about scalability with WordPress the way that we are today. And WooCommerce really is almost single-handedly to credit for all that.
Let's talk a little bit about the future of WooCommerce. What's coming to a WooCommerce near you? We learned that WooCommerce is making investments, a lot of investments into its design and user experience with the insights of John Maeda, the company's global head of computational design and inclusion. The company is also investing in a lot of user research, testing, interviews, feedback, and doing what they can to learn about its users' needs, something Todd Wilkins, I guess, not harped on, but he mentioned quite a few times on how they're really, really trying to learn about what their users want, and they're trying to build tools and features around those needs. Again, he acknowledged the hiccups users encountered with the WooCommerce 3.0 upgrade, and says that the team is recommitted and has placed a heavier emphasis on establishing that reliable upgrade and maintenance path, because the last thing people need is to fear the upgrade process. He also mentioned that WooCommerce is combining its affiliate program with WordPress.com so that everything is managed under one roof. And something I wanted to talk a little bit more about is, as WooCommerce has improved, it has also developed closer ties to Jetpack and WordPress.com in order to provide additional services. And Todd Wilkins talked about this. I'm glad he brought this up. Now, there's been mentions of, there's been some developers on Twitter who have not been too happy about updating WooCommerce 3.2, and next thing you know, Jetpack's installed, and they want to know, how did that happen? And as we found out, more and more features are being tied into Jetpack, which means, if you're using WooCommerce and you want to use a specific feature set, you may have to install Jetpack and have that certain module enabled for it to happen. And Todd Wilkins kind of explained it to where Automatic has a lot of years of experience building and maintaining software as a service infrastructures with WordPress.com and some of the other services they own. And instead of developing their own infrastructure, WooCommerce is simply leveraging what Automatic already has with Jetpack, and there's already a number of services that they're using Jetpack for. And this is something I'm going to highlight more in a future article on WP Tavern. But the way he explained it kind of made sense to me, and it also has the side benefit of making things a bit easier for customers, because I think if you go through the WooCommerce onboarding process and you select a couple different options, like Jetpack's installed and everything's set up for you right there, and you can just start selling products, right after you're done with the onboarding wizard, thanks to this integration with Jetpack. So maybe your thoughts on his mentions of the Jetpack relationship with WooCommerce, Cody.
I tend to have a different view on this, only because it's a challenging perspective, because I think of my customers. I think of people who I spend time with at other e-commerce conferences that don't give a crap about open source and WordPress or any developer hangups or any points of emphasis we have from a developer standpoint. They are seeing platforms with total parity and worrying about their business only. And I compare what WooCommerce is just starting to do compared with a company like Shopify that's literally reaching into every transaction to at least get, monetize the platform. And I think that we're not even close to, the trade-off in the things that we're giving store owners within WooCommerce. So I don't tend to really have a problem with it. None of my big clients that are generating lots of money every month even care about it. I think you just have a lot of, differences of opinion. I think that's what's one of the most frustrating things overall in e-commerce and WooCommerce and part of the WordPress community. It's, being very focused for clients and stores. I mean, none of them really have too much of a concern here. It's just, and if anything, it's like I said, to repeat myself, we're not even close to what other hosted platforms like BigCommerce and Shopify are doing.
Mm-hmm. John, what do you think about the relationship between Jetpack and WooCommerce? I think it's going to get closer. I think they're going to build in more services that tie into the WordPress.com infrastructure through Jetpack, and then those features will be available to you in WooCommerce.
I was surprised to see it happen this way. I think if it was going to happen, it would have been like we've talked about in the show before. I think it makes more sense to have Jetpack act as like a payment gateway than it does to act as like a shipping gateway. But I get that fulfillment is a bigger deal for users. And so to be able to use the WordPress.com platform is pretty smart, I think, to handle that. But I get that. The thing that surprised me about it being sort of like auto installed in the background is it's really the first time that we've seen that happen like this. Like no other plugin just automatically like slurps in some other plugin to like, hey, we've for your convenience have activated all this other stuff for you. Is kind of intrusive in like a way that the WordPress, the greater part of the WordPress community hasn't experienced that yet, and is generally kind of opposed to. It seems a little weird, but it's easy to forget that WooCommerce is an automatic product. As much as it is open source and free, it is owned by a company who is going to use it as a who, if they were smart, right, which they are, will use that as a sales funnel to get people connected to their other services and everything else. So I have a little bird who's told me that they're reworking some of the verbiage for what that Jetpack install process looks and feels like, but there's no hint that it would go away anytime soon. And it's the precedent that we have in WordPress core is like it comes with Akismet ship directly with it built in. It comes with Gravatar directly built in, baked into WordPress core. So having WooCommerce bundled a Jetpack installation process is not that unusual, I guess. It's just
come on, say it, John. Say it. Say it.
It's an interesting strategy, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, I could add one more thing. It is a little strange because it is like, you know, because stepping back from it completely, you could just say, okay, like Shopify is from day one, it's all their stuff, it's hosted, BigCommerce hosted, whatever, and there's no hiding that. But yet to start from completely open source to kind of inch your way to all these things, that's a difficult path. I mean, and we do have to be critical of how they do that because it is a challenge. Although it's interesting with all this Jetpack stuff, like you mentioned, John, with the payment gateway, you have to think that there's got to be this kind of Trojan horsing of possible hosted WooCommerce with all of these steps happening. And I'm not against that because I think that if Automatic is going to take it in that direction and introduce that, I think the market does need that. That's going to benefit shops like us that help customers get onto WooCommerce sooner instead of just sending them to a different platform like BigCommerce or Shopify and say, if you have no money and you've made no money, then it doesn't make sense to take on all this technology responsibility. Start on WooCommerce day one and then graduate to 7-8 figures or whatnot.
And it's not like it's really much different than if you were going to trust your entire business or online store to Shopify in the first place. But there's something that's pretty crafty about having WooCommerce pull in Jetpack and having the Jetpack activation process occur, knowing that to your point about it sort of being the Trojan horse, that one of Jetpack's primary functionalities is being able to clone your site back off into the cloud. So if all of your transactional data ends up gifted over to anyone else's hands without it being pretty clear that your products, your images, your entire online catalog is sort of being cloned over to a Jetpack remote site somewhere for your convenience, it could look sort of dubious, not with any ill intent, I think, by anyone who builds it or develops it. But if someone chooses to scrape a little dirt and they're looking for gold and they find this, they're going to go, well, that's not what I was expecting to find. And so it'll be interesting to see what the evolution of the relationship between WooCommerce and Jetpack turns into, I think, in the coming years, because there's a lot of opportunity. It could be awesome and super fantastic and make everybody's WooCommerce stores amazing, but it really puts Automatic as a company like really, 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 really far ahead of anything that anybody else can compete with or provide. So,
yeah. No, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I actually hope they do take it as far. I mean, definitely need to work out how it's going to all overlap, but I actually hope they do take it out to introduce a hosted platform. Because like I said, I mean, as an e-commerce consultant, we're constantly having to send people to hosted platforms because it's difficult. And that's the challenge that WordPress had back in the day until there was .com was out, but it's much easier in 2017 to start your blog or your marketing site on WordPress than it was 5 or 6 years ago. So I certainly hope that it's easier to start out. And I know that's where they want to take it. They want people to see this as a viable option and an easier option going forward.
Yeah, some of the other changes they mentioned is that they're going to revamp the WooCommerce mobile application, which I have not used. I have not seen. I have no experience with that. Maybe Cody, you can give us a little insight into that. And then extension authors can expect higher commissions. Cha-ching, baby. More control and better access to their customers. Authors will also be able to provide support to their own customers on the site, which is a big thing they talked about during the State of the Woo there. Wilkins mentioned. So they're making a lot of changes, not just to the platform and the code itself, WooCommerce, but also to the website to make it a lot easier for extension developers and to provide support for their customers all through the WooCommerce website.
Well, they're relaunching the marketplace, or they're coming out with a marketplace for extensions. So that was kind of the big news Aviva shared on from Automatic, and that should, along with all of us agencies and all of us coming around and getting on board with supporting WooCommerce as a whole, I think this will be a tremendous opportunity for us to have visibility with our extensions and our products we're putting out for WooCommerce as well.
One of the things that Wilkins mentioned, and I'm glad he brought this up, I thought this was pretty cool, is that earlier this year, WooCommerce dropped its 50% renewal discount, pretty much forcing customers to pay full price without explicitly notifying them, or at least that's what many complained about a few months ago. Near the end of the keynote, Wilkins provided context for the move, saying it was all about sustainability. And Wilkins says the move has proven to be successful, and it's led to a substantial improvement in customer support. And I remember a few months ago when I wrote about this, there was no, WooCommerce has a blog, they have a Twitter account, and you figure, well, if they're going to make this big of a move, use whatever public relations tools you have at your disposal to explain why you're making this move. And at the time, comments on the Tavern article said, hey, if this is about sustainability, if this is going to improve customer support, I'm all for it. Just tell me what this change is, because right now it just looks like a money grab, and there was no further explanation to this. So it was a few months later, but Wilkins kind of confirms that it was about sustainability. Customer support has improved, and it was just nice to kind of get that reinforced context. So, it makes sense. I mean, we assumed it was about sustainability, but there was no public acknowledgement of that by WooCommerce on their blog. But a few months later, that's what we get. We get the acknowledgement that, yes, it was about sustainability, and things are improving because of it. So a little bit props there on the communications department. So everybody involved in the WooCommerce ecosystem, from what I saw, can expect a lot of changes both on the site and in the platform within the coming months. So I don't know, Cody, did you talk to anybody? Can you give us any secret stuff you talk to people? Acquisition offers? I don't know, something like that. Doesn't that stuff?
Everybody's trying to buy each other. Yeah. Not really. If anything, it's funny. I'm going to get real, kind of nerdy on this, but WordCamps tend to feel, the bigger WordCamps tend to feel almost like a high school thing, almost like a vibe like that. WooConf was a lot different. You had a lot of, at least the agencies that were specifically focused on WooCommerce, mind-sized. I know Zayo, the folks from Zayo were there, WebDev. I mean, it's just a more tighter knit community, with those of us who are just focused on e-commerce. And so it's a lot different. Everybody's, seemed to be really on board with helping each other and growing the platform overall. So as far as any drama or dirt, I mean, it was pretty drama free, which was a good thing,
You think the price point of the cost of entry is significantly higher for something like WooConf versus a WordCamp, 30 versus the $600 or $700 that it was, right? So does that instantly price people like into the serious zone, where if you're going to send 2 or 3 of your employees to a conference and drop $5,000 on a couple of days worth of shoulder to shoulder time with other people in the professional space, that just weeds people out right off the bat? Or do you think it was something else?
Well, so yeah, that's a good question, because I feel like WooConf was definitely feels a lot more like it's on purpose trying to be a higher level than a WordCamp. Well, let me take a step back. So WooConf and WordPress or WordCamp, WooConf and WordCamp US have a very similar feel in the sense that, Automatic is very involved with planning and whatnot. So it feels like the same level conference. However, I feel like in years past with the 2 previous, with inviting store owners, it did feel like a more grown-up conference by the price point. But being a developer-specific conference with the price point, I can see an argument to making that more a little bit more affordable, because we're not necessarily excluding store owners, but we are focused on developers in this setting. So it could have been a little bit more, a little bit more cost less or more affordable. So I could definitely see that.
That was one of the things I really enjoyed about the way that the Automatics WordPress.com VIP team did the VIP mixers, like the once a year, everyone get together and do the VIP workshops that would happen. It was intensive, and there were like actual workshops, like stuff to work on and do. It was intentionally a small group of people, and it was like priced at a point where it was intentionally catered towards serious VIP style sites and developers, and really the upper sort of echelon of contributors or people that were working on WordPress sites back then. And so with WooCommerce, I think that we probably have a similar spectrum of sites and developers and agencies, and the people that are already good engineers are going to continue to be good engineers. The people that are already good at selling are going to be great at selling. And but it's a different thing than a workshop that's $50 or $100 versus a couple $100 entry fee. So interesting.
Yeah, I actually like that idea. I feel like they should. Well, Brad Williams and I were talking about that a little bit yesterday. Just because of having it be a developer focused conference could have, made store owners feel a little bit more unwelcome than may have attended in years past. So I almost feel like it would be a good idea to have a once a year, call it a workshop, call it an overview, do that little state of WooCommerce, but have it be workshop focused and smaller. I think that would be a fantastic thing to do for sure.
What are your thoughts?
I think David Bissett and I think WordCamp Miami is actually going to do not only like a JavaScript track, but an actual e-commerce track that's going to include workshops. David Bissett at WordCamp Miami, he's like a trendsetter, I think.
He is, for sure. He jumps all over. He sees it before anybody else does. That's a fact.
He does.
Cody, what are your thoughts on
He's a prophet.
A user-specific conference? Then I know I saw some feedback and grumbling specifically about having like a very store owner specific Woo conference. Also, any ideas there?
I think the workshop would be a cool way to go with that. Although the conference sounds a little bit more schmoozier, or a little bit more better packaged. The only thing I can think of is a bunch of agencies just trying to jump all over each other's clients, trying to pitch them or get to know them. Very incestuous.
What if we open a WooCommerce store where companies are for sale as items in the store, so we can use WooCommerce to handle the WooCommerce acquisitions?
There you go. Then that would boost Todd's number every year. We'll go from 10 billion to 20 billion.
Yes,
just like that. So exciting times for WooCommerce. I did want to get to another piece of WooCommerce news here before we wrap it up with Cody, and that is WooCommerce retires the Canvas theme and they're recommending that customers migrate to the storefront theme. Imagine that. But WooCommerce is retiring its Canvas theme after 7 years. So we're talking about 2010, which was a totally different landscape in the theme industry with WordPress. It was one of the themes that kind of gave people the blocks and short codes, the page builder type themes that we have today. It sold for $99 before the URL was pulled, and now it redirects to a retirement page. One of the main reasons why they're retiring it is because the overhaul of the bits and pieces, the bones of the theme is no longer able to keep pace with the changes that Gutenberg and the customizer will bring to WordPress theming and site building. And so you may think, well, why don't they just open source it? Well, they discontinued Canvas sales and they won't be open sourcing it to the community. Pierce says that overhauling the theme wouldn't serve our users, yet continuing to sell it as it wasn't the right decision. So they made a difficult decision to say goodbye, and that extending its lifetime will not serve the community by open sourcing it. So it's in the best interest of their users and the community to eventually move to another theme. So I think they've made changes to where certain extensions are free for those who are migrating. If you have a active Canvas subscription, they will honor it, provide updates, make sure it works with WordPress until all those subscriptions are expired. And they also have guides available on their website that we link to in the article on WP Tavern that explain how to migrate to another theme. And they're recommending Storefront, which is pretty obvious example considering its tie-in to WooCommerce, and it will have support for Gutenberg. And speaking of this news, and maybe even Gutenberg, have there been any rumblings, maybe at WooConf or discussions through different agencies on how Gutenberg is going to affect products or how people interact with or build store pages or anything to that level?
A little bit. That's still I haven't played too much with Gutenberg myself because I'm afraid. I have fear. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't fear the Reaper.
I do think it's well, obviously Automatic, is thinking through all of that, especially with the Woo team about how it's going to integrate with everything with WooCommerce stores. I think it'll be more of a challenge, but I mean, ultimately, I'm sure that it's all being thought of, especially with all of the extensions in the Woo store, at least the core ones that somebody needs to launch a business with. I just think it's going to be a challenge with some of the more niche extensions, more of the things that maybe aren't that well built are going to be tough. So other than that, nobody was freaking out. It wasn't like a wave of like, people saying, "Oh my God, when Gutenberg comes out, it's going to be total nightmare."
Forget products. It's just going to be blocks. We're just going to have a product block and a text block and a picture block. Let's just block everything. So I have no idea how it's going to work, but that's everything else is a block. I wonder how Gutenberg is going to. I mean, I know it's TinyMCE. It's an editor. I mean, that's what you use to make your copy. But it'll be interesting to see how that ties into the storefront theme and how people create their product pages in WordPress.
I guarantee you that if not WooCommerce, someone will eventually have a billing block, a shipping block, your checkout block, your shopping cart block, your login block, your registration block. These will all
come with a theme probably. And you just fill them in. You just fill the details in, and the theme will take care of it because it's all blocks.
Yep, it'll for sure happen. Someone will do that, and it'll be valuable to some, and it'll be confusing to others. I think actually getting rid of the Canvas theme looks like it was like it's bootstrap based thing, which like everyone started off like with a bootstrap based thing because it's like you get such a head start with Bootstrap, and you get all these UI elements, and you can build so quickly and rapidly. So it takes a lot of, I would say, it takes some guts to get rid of something that you've invested 7 years worth of time in and move on to the next version of it. But I think the more important thing about sunsetting a theme like this that really was kind of a critical part of WooCommerce's early success is that users should expect for storefront to really only have a 7-year or less life cycle. And so people that are planning the future of their business or their stores should invest in the future version of a 7-year, a 5-year, a 4-year development cycle for building a new theme, redesigning a new thing, and so on. And that's not cheap, especially if you're a small company that isn't necessarily making a huge dent in that $10 billion number. So here's to another 7 years, hopefully, because it's nice to see powerful, popular themes live on for a really long time.
So we have comments on the article like this one I'll read, and I'm not going to say the name of the author, but so with Canvas joining the club, you've abandoned every single one of the over 50 themes you had built as Woo themes, except Storefront yet. Very disappointing. Given your history of theme abandonment, I would be very reluctant to consider Storefront, even if it was free forever. And there are many other comments on here of people who have just put their site onto Canvas, or who have just finished up 10 client sites, and all their client sites are now finished products with the Canvas theme. And now they have to go back and have conversations with them about, well, now I have to migrate your site and you have to pay me to do it to a different theme. I mean, so A, how do people have these conversations? And B, why do people expect software to be there and free forever? I mean, that's not how software works.
Yeah, you know,
7 years is a long time.
7 years.
Oh, sorry, John.
No, I was just going to say, you don't have to have those conversations. If you built a site and they were happy with Canvas, they are happy. Leave it. Don't go upselling something after you just sold them the 7 years worth of other thing. Give them some time to figure it out. If they're happy, they're happy. But I think that comment was like definitely the glass half empty version of what I was saying, right? Like, it's, there's I don't know. I think themes are going to come and go. Hopefully there will only be more themes to choose from when it comes to WooCommerce available themes in general, and the block-based Gutenberg style approach to all of that. There have been Visual Composer to page lines. I mean, there are like these have been tools that people have been building and trying to do for years. And so having native support for that really is owning that. And so people will double down on it, and we will see a very quick turnaround in evolution of WordPress themes happen in the next year after Gutenberg lands. So people should expect for the landscape to change pretty dramatically, I think.
Like this comment too. I'm reading this and feeling absolute dread. I have 25 plus websites built on Canvas, all for small businesses. This is a sad day, and I'm so disappointed with this decision. And look, I get it. If you have client sites or you use Canvas, this sucks. I mean, it sucks to hear that the product you built sites on, sucks. It will no longer be maintained after your subscription expires. But you got to move on. They've provided the store bundle extensions. They provided for free. I've really enjoyed watching how the WooCommerce team has responded to many of these comments, saying, "Hey, we get it. We understand your frustration. We know this sucks, but I was very appreciative of the detailed explanation and as to how they came to this decision. And this is just the nature of software. You got to be prepared to move and migrate. And someone else suggested or published a comment saying, well, now I'm going to, for all my client sites, I'm going to use different themes, a different theme for every site, so I don't have to worry about switching 10 client sites if a theme decides to go away. And I don't think that's the answer to the problem either. I mean, especially if you find the right solution for all those sites.
Jeff, I got to say, you might have a future in dramatic comment reading.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, hey, that's just how I read them in my head, I should do a new podcast called Jeff Reads Tavern Comments. No, I think that would be a hit. I think people will listen to that.
Yeah, well, you can make it sound very, very absolutely dreadful, or little mild take. No, I don't know. I mean, I think this is the thing I keep thinking about is technical debt, and e-commerce stores are notorious for this. I mean, it's a tough deal, because I could say that every e-commerce store that finds us, they're not focused on a redesign. They're focused on something affecting their revenue, about speeding things up, adding functionality, or something along those lines. It's hardly ever a redesign, a complete redesign. So they like to get the value and as much time out of the theme as possible. But again, 5 to 7 years. I mean, think about how much a technology platform can grow. I mean, think about, not only software, but hardware. Think about the iPhone 5 years ago, or computers 5 years ago. It's like, I mean, I think it could be a difficult pill, but I think it's a necessary pill to take, 5 to 7 years.
I also want to say that the writing was on the wall for a long time. This used to be a company named Woo Themes. They had a lot. Themes was a core part of their business. Then they sort of retired that. And then they changed their name to WooCommerce. Then they created a WooCommerce specific theme called Storefront, which is their bread and butter. Mm-hmm. And their focus is entirely on WooCommerce and e-commerce. The theme business is gone. It's retired. It's going to die. I mean, the writing was on the wall. So this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
I think Jay-Z probably said it best. To be at an all-time high, the perfect time to say goodbye. Canvas has had a good run. Time to sunset it. Time to say goodbye. Storefront's better looking anyways. Storefront's a better theme. Yeah. So it's a clear, obvious, evident move. So I think it's the right thing to do.
It was a more subtle jetpack Trojan horse entry to the theme selection game for WooCommerce. Storefront's appearance was their subtle way of saying this is going to be the de facto theme, and don't get too cuddly with Canvas going forward.
This is great. All right, so that wraps it up as far as our review of WooConf. Cody, I want to thank you very much for sharing your personal experience there and giving us some of the highlights of that event. If people have e-commerce questions, or they want you to fix all their problems, whether it relates to e-commerce or WooCommerce, how can people get in touch with you?
You can come to our website, modeeffect.com, and you can send me dreadful comments on Twitter at Cody L.
Beautiful. And of course, I'll have that link up in the show notes, man. Cody, thanks again, and man, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Cody. Thanks for hanging out again. It's always fun.
Oh, yeah.
No problem. And that was the WooConf update from our official correspondent, Cody Lendefeld. Now, I want to get to a different kind of press, one that's called Cabo Press. Oh, and my partner in crime here, John James Jacoby, was down in Cabo San Lucas. Is that where it's at?
Cabo San Lucas, Mexico.
Cabo San Lucas, Mexico for Cabo Press. And look, I'll start off by saying here's my never been there, 600 miles, I don't know how far I am away review. You sit around in the pool, you have a tan, you drink fancy cocktails, you say on Twitter you're talking about WordPress. I don't know if I should believe you. Everybody has a great time, fancy meals, everybody's taking selfies, and then at the end of the week you have a great tan and say it's the best conference you've ever been to.
I mean, I don't get a great tan. I get freckles, and then my skin peels off. That's what happens for me. That is not the outcome that I've got. But I think that's probably not an unusual. I think most people have that perception of Cabo Press, is that it's just like people chilling by the beach, like having a Mai Tai and like not getting anything done. But I feel very fortunate to have been invited to a very small, what I would call exclusive, very serious group of people that happen to use WordPress or have a business around WordPress, to all meet in a very comfortable, open, intimate kind of place, to share their opinions and thoughts and perspectives on making money, or contributing to core, or marketing, or selling products, or managing a team, to hiring and firing. All of those topics and stuff came up. And so while it And I think it's been different every year. This was my first year being invited to Cabo Press, and I hope to be invited back in some future year. But everyone that was there took this extremely seriously. I mean, there was a very strict schedule. You're in the pool by 9 o'clock for sessions. Sessions are happening from 9 until noon. We had lunch groups that were the same, so we hung out and we got to compare notes from sessions that we missed. We had some free time to digest and enjoy the scenery until dinner. We broke apart into dinner groups that had like dedicated questions and topics to talk about, where it was all WordPress based. Like everything was around everything from the affiliate marketing to WooCommerce to I mean, it was great. So to try and dispel any of the perception that this isn't like a serious mastermind type event, in my experience, it was like invaluable, because these are the types of interactions. They're intimate, they're small, they're tiny groups of people that are hyper focused on like educating others about their experiences in very specific areas of running a WordPress business. And so it is, in my opinion, worth more than the price of admission.
We should probably mention who organized this event.
This is, I mean, CaboPress.com is the URL for it itself, but Chris Lemma is sort of the mastermind and figurehead, really, of the entire thing. And so while there are other instructors and people that are helping out, pretty much everything is Chris Lemma. So it's I think it's awesome that he takes the time out to get people together, and the initiative isn't super easy, and the communication for the event was all very thorough, super well done. I really don't have enough nice things to say about my experience at Cabo Press. And so,
all right. So,
shut me up at any time.
So if you're having these different conversations and all these events, tell me the one thing. Tell me the one moment or something close to it that made you really think or ponder and go, yeah, okay.
So we actually, this was one of the last night that we were there. That exact question was the question that we were to talk about at dinner. Was what was your one or two takeaways, really? And mine, I think, is going to be different than most people's, and so take mine for what it's worth. But the thing that influenced me the most at Cabo Press was a session by Syed Balki from WP Beginner and Opt-in Monster and the dozen products and things that he's a part of at this point. But it was the way that Syed describes his approach towards marketing and really just making a sale, like selling the thing that he believes in that provides value to users. And so because I don't naturally think that way, because I'm not really naturally a product guy who wants to sell what I do, I naturally feel like I want to give it away. And so to hear someone who is as passionate about selling things as I am about open sourcing things was the most influential thing for me, because it sort of convinced me that that there's value in the code that I write above and beyond just the spiritual value, but even in these tools and things should be making money, and here are some ways that you might find success in actually doing that. I don't know that I would have gotten that same type of interaction or feedback or conversation, even just sitting in a pool in a crowd. It wasn't directly from Syed to me. This was me absorbing all the things he was saying. So I don't know I would have gotten that through my thick skull any other way. So my takeaway was
2 or 3 months from this day, you're going to write a tweet and say, boy, everything I learned from Cabo Press is paying off. My revenue is through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, even if I make twice as many dollars, then I will have made $2. So, I'd like to maybe 3x my revenue to $3, maybe $5. I don't want to be too greedy about it.
So that's good. I'm appreciative to have someone who actually went to Kava Press on the show to tell us a little bit about what it's like, because, I jokingly say that perspective, but I mean, if you just see the pictures and what people are sharing on social media, that's exactly what it looks like. But I wanted you to actually say, hey, this is a serious thing. We're talking about serious things here, and we're learning, and there are a lot of things that we discuss that are actionable that we can do that could lead to increased sales and revenue when we get back.
That's exactly what it's all about. And I think because it's a small group of people and it's in a sort of a private, intentionally private place, that you're not sending pictures of the sessions or the fun or people in their swimsuits or people with their shirts off, because it's not what this event is all about. This event isn't about sharing I will take a picture of the beautiful scenery because I think it's a very pretty area, but I'm not taking pictures of people because those aren't people that want their picture taken at that point. So it's not about the sessions like it might be at a WordCamp. It's more about the relationship building and the education that you get from it. And I joke about not selling plugins or about not converting to making money off of stuff. And I've been really fortunate that hasn't been a thing that like in my career that I've like needed to focus on. But the thing that seems to be really the reason to do it, my newly found reason to actually try to monetize any of the plugins or code or things that I've got is to multiply my efforts, is to be able to have, hopefully, not just to inspire others, but it's easier if you have a company like Automatic of 500 people, and you can actually get a lot more accomplished and open source more and give more back if it's more than just one person. So if I can switch gears a little bit to try and monetize any of the experience or code that I've written, hopefully that allows me to sponsor others to try and double or triple down on contributions back. So that was my takeaway.
Awesome. So we do have one bit of WordPress news I wanted to talk a little bit about here. That is, well, first of all, WordPress 4.9 Beta 4 has been released. So get out there, get testing, test out all the cool stuff in there, especially within the customizer change sets. You can schedule changes. There's a new theme browser experience within the customizer. Check that out. There's a couple other things as well. But, WordPress beta releases typically don't generate controversy. But on WordPress 4.9 Beta 3, there is this dashboard widget, a call to action that says, try out Gutenberg, or try out the new WordPress editing experience, with a button that says install Gutenberg. And as one could possibly easily predict, there were developers who saw this and said, oh, no way that this is going to be in the final published public version of WordPress, because clients could see this, clients and regular users could install this. Gutenberg is in a state of development that this seems like a very bad idea to be telling users to create and write content in beta software that is in a high state of flux. And so there were plugins that were created that were to hide the nag, and there were also bits of code to hide the nag. Eventually, what happened was that it was removed in WordPress 4.9 Beta 4. In fact, the core team did a lot of discussion, and they talked it over with Matt Mullenweg, and Matt says that he likes the idea of the Gutenberg promo, but he wants things to be a bit further along before we really open the doors to try and get as many users as possible. And if we can remove the promo, we can always bring it back in 4.9.1 or another time when things are more ready. Now, there are other people who were advocating for this change, saying, well, it would lead to a larger test bed, and if there are any issues are discovered, we can find out about them now, we can fix them, and it'll lead to a better product down the road. But then there's also, the concern, the possible technical debt, the backwards compatibility issues that could arise, the whole content, losing data, losing content, maybe even a lot of users having the first impression of using Gutenberg, and their first impression is that this sucks, it's terrible, it doesn't work the way I think it should. So there's all those issues. And I wanted to ask you, John, and I think this would be kind of a neat discussion, is that, well, first of all, the dashboard prompt, as far as I can remember, would set a new precedent for actually notifying regular users of a beta feature that they could install and try on their live site. I mean, the most memorable plugin I can think of that started off as a plugin versus a feature that was added to core is MP6, which was this new admin backend redesign. However, I don't remember a dashboard call to action that says, hey, try the new admin experience, install MP6. So this would set a precedent. And in that vein, you actually chimed in on the ticket and said, okay, if we're going to have this, let's try and create a meta box that isn't just for Gutenberg, but could be for other code name or different features down the line.
Yep. Yeah. I think everyone that put effort into Browse Happy was put into WordPress core to notify users that they're using out-of-date web browsers. So I think that proved that having something baked into WordPress to alert users of anything really does convert, right? It gets people to think more or take action. And so the second most recent version of that I can think of is the community meta box that's in the dashboard, showing people where meetups are happening and WordCamps are happening that might be close to them. And that's a big deal too, because it gets people excited. It gets people connected and with one another, talking about WordPress related things. And so my concern when I looked at the code that went in here for the Gutenberg nag is that it went in as if it was going to be removed. Everything was like Gutenberg code named, and within the walls of Automatic, there's code names for all of their products that they have. Jetpack wasn't always called Jetpack, just like other things weren't always called what they end up to be once they're user-facing features. And so to keep this named Gutenberg once it's in the WordPress core project was not what I had envisioned for this to be. And so I think it's a really good idea. And if it is something that we're going to pursue bundling along with the WordPress piece of software itself, I think we owe it to our future selves to make it flexible. We already connect to api.wordpress.org for props and contributions. And what used to be Recent Rockstars that now got renamed. But all that stuff gets served from api.wordpress.org. So we have an opportunity to say, okay, what new upcoming cool thing do we want to notify people about? And along with that, there will be people that want to hide that meta box. And in the code, it's easier for developers to do that if the name for that meta box is always the same from WordPress release to the next WordPress release and so on. And so if this box is named Gutenberg and the next box is named the Four Horsemen and the next one is named something else, you can't keep renaming the code in WordPress core. It kind of has to be named the same thing. So I think everyone is right here. I think it's a great idea to have a suggestion for what's coming in future WordPress releases to get people a heads up. But it's a good idea to be developer friendly and make sure that this box is removable for the type of websites that don't benefit from actually seeing it. So everyone's right. And the future version of this box, if it comes back, hopefully does all of those things. So
let me tell you, I don't think advertising Gutenberg right now on the dashboard to millions of users as the new editing experience, which I think the verbiage there could be changed. And that was something that was brought up in the ticket because that makes it sound like it's a done deal. Like this is going to be the new editing experience in WordPress until a merge proposal has been published, because I think by that time, many of the quirks on how it handles metadata, meta blocks, preventing data loss, a lot of those things will probably be solved. And when I first saw this, I raised my eyebrows at the idea of advertising Gutenberg right now at its current stage up to the masses. And my primary concern is that it's not ready yet. And we're, for what do we say about beta versions of WordPress? Install on a staging site. Right. But here we have a prompt that says, try out this new thing, which is in beta, a high state of flux on your live site. So there's that concern. But then if it's not ready yet now, the thing I'm thinking of is, well, when could it be ready, or when is
sure.
the right time, or maybe even a better word to think of it is a responsible time to advertise installing beta software onto a live site. So these are the things I'm thinking about today.
And they're valid. Those are all valid questions, especially since this is something that's new within the WordPress dashboard itself. Other pieces of software, I will call GitLab out specifically, have had something similar to this for a really long time. Their dashboard alludes to future things that the team is working on, but they also have a track record of like shipping and executing on those promises like 100% of the time. So I think that your point that like Gutenberg isn't ready and it may not actually be, I mean, let's be honest, Gutenberg is going to be the new editor.
Okay, all right, fine.
Right? It is. So it's not like a lie to tell users that it's the new, it is going to be. And users don't really necessarily care if it's React or Vue or anything else. That's not a concern for most people either. But it might have been premature if Gutenberg doesn't ship for 6 months. Are we going to wait 6 months and have that dashboard nag there the entire time? If it's too early, then you're just ahead of the sweet spot where people are going to forget about it 4 months later because they will have dismissed that meta box so long ago that it won't even matter. So there is a sweet spot, and because it's new, it is unlikely that you will hit that sweet spot right off the bat. And so it's smart, I think, to remove it because it does seem a little premature. But that's, I mean, beta and getting it in early. I mean, these are the good things about WordPress core development being up to trusted leaders and individuals to make these decisions and then revert them if they were wrong. So it went in, feedback came in, it was reverted. That is literally the most democratic process that you could possibly have when it comes to a change like this. So even though it could be easy to look at this a little bit doom and gloom, I really don't see it that way. This was the process as it's designed to happen. So now it comes back bigger, better, stronger, faster than it was before. So,
you know, and in terms of the sweet spot, and this is something we were talking a little bit in the Tavern Conference today, Kevin Hoffman actually brought this up, is the first impressions. And that is if we, and like you said, people having a great first impression that maybe it would make them easier to adopt or have a better willingness to adopt this if they have a good first impression, which, you know, at Gutenberg stage of development right now, I don't think the chance of people having a good first impression with it is probably not as high as if they would delay it or had that meta box later in the development cycle. And, you know, so I'll ask you, how important do you think first impressions are to the masses, the everyday user, their willingness to adopt this new editor instead of just complete revolt?
It may be the single most important part of shipping something like this. WordPress is a tool for publishing to the web. If the new interface is instantly too complicated or confusing or a turnoff or too slow or not fully featured enough, as patient and tolerant as users can be, if your first impression is I installed a new version of WordPress and I don't even know how to publish posts anymore, everyone loses at that point. And there will be people that inevitably do feel that way regardless. So there's nothing that you could have ever done to have improved anything. And that is, let's subtract, we're on a grading curve, right? We'll cut off the lowest, then cut off the highest. Let's say that if the first impression from the meaty middle is still negative, then it doesn't take much to have people start second guessing whether or not WordPress is the right platform to invest in or use going forward. So I would argue that first impressions for something like this are like incredibly critical to future adoption and even theme adoption, right? If what we're hoping for, what WordPress users are hoping for, or what developers, core community people are aiming for, is that block-based editors will introduce much more sophisticated themes that are able to just to pull off a lot more interesting user-facing features and stuff that if Gutenberg misses the mark, themes are not going to ramp up super quickly. So I think it's super important. But the one thing I've learned over the years of working on the web and on WordPress and the BBs and everything else is like your average user is really patient. They are used to kind of, I don't know, clumsily navigating every piece of software all the time anyways. And so things that we can see that we are like hypersensitive to as like something that should be improved, most users will skip right over and find something that we didn't even see. And so this is where user testing, like literal, actual professional user testing, is the most important next step for something like Gutenberg. Once the leadership team behind it is confident that what they have is what they envisioned. The next step is let's make sure that what we envisioned is actually a good experience for the users. And in order to do that, whatever the old adage is, Albert Einstein was probably wrongly quoted as saying, the same mind that creates a problem won't be the same mind that solves the problem. So if what you want is to know that you've hit the mark, you got to give it to somebody else.
All right. So, before we get to our picks, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Where do you think that sweet spot is in terms of Gutenberg's development stage and putting that the admin notification in the dashboard? What would be the sweet spot for you?
So we know that WordPress core updates happen within days. So the majority of WordPress installations are updated within, I think, 72 hours is when the bulk of core updates happen from one major version of WordPress to the next. There are holdouts. There are people that will take weeks. There are longer deployments, all that stuff. Again, we chop that off. And so if we know that, if that's still true for WordPress 4.9 and 5.0 and going forward, that the majority of WordPress sites will get updated in a couple of days, then I think that we have weeks, not months, maybe a month, maybe 3 weeks to me, to have that advertisement, which is what it is, to have that advertisement for what's coming in the next version of WordPress, to excite people and to kind of tantalize them to kind of motivate them to upgrade to the next version of WordPress. I think that looks like weeks or days and not months. Anything too long is just they'll dismiss it, and anything that's too soon is like not giving them enough time to prepare. So 7 days to 21 days is my estimation if I was going to guess. Anything longer is too long, and anything shorter is not enough time to prepare.
Excellent. So with that, we're going to move into our picks of the week. I do have a pick this week, and it's actually HeroPress. I love HeroPress by Topher DeRoja. He recently published an article about accepting donations. So he hasn't accepted donations since he started this project, and now he will. So the donations will be used for to hire a helper to make the banners, the beautiful banners that accompany each essay on HeroPress. It will also help him be able to visit WordCamps on behalf of HeroPress, something he's told me that he's going to publish more information about, some of the fantastic times that he's had in India at the various WordCamps he's been to. And it will also cover his time spent on HeroPress. It takes up some of his personal time during the week. This is a passion project for him, and having a little bit of extra coin in the pocket from backers and supporters would go a long way towards covering those hours spent during the week. So if you visit the HeroPress.com, there is a link down at the top of the site that's called Donate, and you could be a patron, or you can give directly. And of course, you're using the Give plugin, so 100% of your gift goes to HeroPress. And gave him $25 the other day because I strongly believe in what Topher DeRosa is doing. I enjoy his project and his passion and his work, and I've said it numerous times. Him and his family are good people, and I support what they do and his contribution to the WordPress community. And I wish I made more money, disposable income, because I'd just be dishing it out to all kinds of people in the WordPress community if I could. But definitely check it out. If you're a fan of HeroPress and enjoy what he's doing with that project, please consider donating to the cause.
Ditto. Totally agree. That's awesome. My pick of the week is less of a pick and more news. So the folks over at Ninja Forms hit 1 million active installs today, which is like a major milestone. There are less than 30 in my research that are over the 1 million mark. And so
how many of them are owned by Automatic?
Okay, sorry. I mean, Hello Dolly is one of them, I think. But if for the forms space in WordPress is largely dominated by Gravity Forms, Contact Form 7. We can kind of name
WooForm services, a lot of services.
Yep. And so I got to spend some time with a couple of the folks from Ninja Forms. We're at Combo Press.
James Laws.
Yep.
Was there another Jeff? I think they have another Jeff, don't they?
I think they do have another.
I thought they have another Jeff. I know James Laws is one of the founders.
So we got to talking about Ninja Forms and where they were at, and they had said, "Yeah, we're about to hit 1 million." And I was like, "Well, let's look and let's pay attention to this. Like, that's a big deal." And so they hit it today. And so my tip of the hat. And general. I'm wearing headphones, so I'll tip my headphones to the Ninja Forms folks. I mean, that's a major milestone. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of planning. It is not easy, I think, to get to a point like that. And so they're a small team. They have a cool story, which I will let them tell on their own in a different episode. But I wanted to give them the credit where it was due and the shout out because it's a big deal and they are rocking it. And I wish them many more millions of installs in the future.
Not too long ago, they completely redid their interface. It's all like JavaScript Power now on the back end. So it's been a while since I've checked out Ninja Forms, but they continue to try and innovate and continue in the form space. Of course, they have the Zapier connection, so you could tap in all these different services. Many of these form plugins tap in allow to have Zapier integration, but it's definitely good work to them. Kudos to them, and congrats, James and the Ninja Forms crew. So with that, I guess that's the end of the show. We actually have an ending.
I guess
we have an ending to WordPress Weekly. Let's see here. So next Wednesday's, God, man, it'll be November already. Unbelievable. So it'll be November 1st, and then going through the month, we'll have, I guess we'll have some guests on. We'll dive deeper into some news topics, and then near the end go ahead.
I feel like November 1st starts the countdown to WordCamp US for us too, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because at the end of the month, in fact, I'll be leaving November 30th. To get down to Nashville, and then the conference starts on December 1st, Friday.
Yep.
So and it'll go on through the 3rd, and there you have it.
November is when it becomes real. Like, oh, yeah, that's coming very quickly.
Just had turkey. Oh, wait, WordCamp US. There you go. WordCamp US would be the pumpkin pie to my Thanksgiving dinner. So Thanksgiving, the week will be on the 23rd. So on the 22nd, John, it's kind of a tradition here on the show. Come up with a couple of different things you would like to give thanks for when it comes to WordPress. And I'm sure it'll be no problem for you.
No problem at all.
A couple of things to be thankful for. Every year, there's always something to be thankful for. For me, it's health insurance, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that maybe next month.
I think anyone that is as clumsy as we collectively are is probably pretty thankful to have adequate health.
Or dumb enough to chase a deer. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of WordPress Weekly. You can find show notes for this episode and all other episodes on wptavern.com. And you could follow me on Twitter at Jeffro, JEFFR0, where I still only have 140 characters, but thank goodness I probably would be dangerous with 280. And John, where can we find you?
GitHub and Twitter at JJJ, and my blog, jjj.blog. And yeah, that was a good episode. I feel like we're like on time and everything.
Exactly. Thank you very much to our live listeners. I saw we had about 7, 8, 9, 10 of them. Thank you very much for tuning into the show. We appreciate it. And for all our listeners out there, if you could, please stop by, give us a review on iTunes. It's been a while since we got one. So if you could please spare a few moments, give us a 1-star, 5-star, doesn't matter. Let us know what you think of the show. And until then, everybody have a safe, enjoyable rest of the week. We'll talk to you again next Wednesday afternoon. Say bye, John.
Bye, John.